I've been asked to talk a little more about my composting toilet system, so this will be my attempt to do that. And let me apologize for my lack of videography skills and knowledge of video editing, which is nil, because really I started doing these videos for my family, and you know, they're family. They don't care if it's not that great. So maybe after I finish building this place, I'll sit down and learn how to edit videos. But for now, I'll just apologize and hope you can deal with it. So when we set out to build our barn-dominium, what happened was we were living up in the Pacific Northwest, Washington and Oregon, for the past, for like 25 years. And all of my family lives in Texas. We're from Texas. My parents started getting older and needed some help, and they wanted to move out of their big, giant, difficult to keep up house in the country and move into town to an independent living facility. So we decided to move back to Texas and take care of their house for them until we can get it sold. My husband's retired, and my job is I work as a nurse practitioner, and I can do temp work or whatever. So we were the most mobile in the family. So we moved down here just before COVID hit. And time went on, and mom's health declined, and she ended up breaking her hip while I was back in Washington working on a 3-month contract. Fortunately, I was right at the end of the contract, so I was able to get home pretty quick. So since then, I have not been taking jobs, and we've been staying here, which makes the income a lot lower than it was. So my parents had given us 25 acres of their property to build a house on, so that we'd have a place to live once we sell their house. And we decided to build a barn-dominium, and the original plan had 2 buildings, and one would be shop and hobbies, because I sort of collect hobbies, and the other would be the house. And we started with the shop building because then we'd have all the tools to work on the house building. And that's when I stopped working for now. So then we kind of retrofitted everything into the shop building. So now we're building a small living area in one end and a shop in the other end. And the reason for that long rambling story is it costs $10,000 to put a septic system in. And that's also the only thing that we have to have permits for and stuff in this rural area. And we just didn't want to put that much money into something, you know, into that. Sorry, I just knocked a board over. We didn't want to drop that much money into just one piece of what we need overall. So I started watching YouTube, and particularly Doug and Stacy's videos. Those are really good, talking about their compost system. And it kind of got me thinking, hey, we could do that. We don't need a septic system. My husband was a little harder to convince. All the DIY composting toilets he had seen were just sort of wooden boxes with the toilet lid on top, and he didn't think that was very pretty. So then he wanted to buy a commercial composting toilet, and you know, that's like, what, $2,000 to $5,000, and I didn't want to spend that either. So I had to prove to him that I could make a composting toilet that wouldn't look ugly. So that's how this toilet came about. And I just sort of winged it. I'm not really a woodworker or a carpenter. I'm sort of learning as I go. So what I did was I bought a cheap toilet seat from Lowe's. It's just like fake wood grain pattern. And then I traced that to make the part that it screws onto. So you'll see one problem with composting toilets is sawdust gets everywhere. And I kind of cut that out, and you can see my woodworking skills. My jigsaw skills were not the greatest, and it's kind of crooked and wobbly. And then I made a bottom piece to match it that kind of extended out the back a little more. And mostly what I was going for was a shape that looked toilet-like, that I could fit a 5-gallon bucket into. So this is what I ended up with. And the reason it's shiny down there, it's not wet. I sealed the whole thing with penetrating epoxy from Total Boat, because I didn't want, misses to soak into the wood and make it start smelling. So everything's sealed with that penetrating epoxy. Anyway, I bent some 1/8 inch MDF into sort of a hoop shape to go around, and I built this back part to hook it to, and then I went out in the back of my dad's barn and found some old aged wood and cut it into strips, and I just started kind of going around and gluing it onto those bent strips, and then these strips inside just kind of help support the bent strips. And you can see it's just kind of cobbled together. I had put these 2x6 pieces in to sort of support the weight of the person sitting on it, and then I had to cut openings in them to fit where the toilet seat fastens on. So, I mean, I basically make these things up as I go along. So there you go. It's actually bolted to the concrete floor. I only put one bolt in for now because our floor is going to be polished concrete, and right now they've got it covered up with this white stuff to protect it until we're finished building, and then they'll come out and do the final polishing. So I just put one bolt in for now, so it's a little wobbly, but I'll put the second bolt in once the floor is finished. So that's the innards of the bottom part. And then I just sort of kept building back so that I'd have a place to sit the toilet tank on. And the toilet tank actually doubles as sawdust storage. And this is my super fancy scoop made from a tissue box and duct tape because, hey, that's how I roll. I'll make a fancy one later. The cobweb spiders seem to really like it in here. So the sawdust is messy. I'm gonna either have to get better at housekeeping or find a way to minimize that, but maybe once we've moved in, they won't be as active. And what I really wanna do is put a toilet handle on here and make it make a flushing sound when you move the handle, but that'll come later when the important stuff is done. So the way it works is you stick your bucket in, and I just emptied this yesterday. We've been using it. We've used it a whole bucket's worth. So I stick the bucket in, I put a couple inches of sawdust in the bottom so nothing sticks to the bottom. And then each time you use it, you just put a generous heap of sawdust on top of what you added to the bucket. And I mean generous, like totally cover it up. And I even cover up the toilet paper. Like I said, we've been using this for a few months, and you can even get right down here over it even when it was completely full, you couldn't smell a thing. And if my cousins were here, they would back me up on that because they were really skeptical too, and they came and did the sniff test and were very surprised that they couldn't smell anything. All right, I don't know how to splice videos yet, so you're gonna have to bear with me while we walk outside and look at the next step. Oh, one last thing. A lot of people use urine diverters and take care of the urine separately from the poop, but that just seemed like a really stinky, nasty thing because the urine doesn't get sawdust, it gets drained, and ew. So I figure urine's full of nitrogen, it's probably good for plants, so why not? So we're just doing everything in the bucket and putting sawdust and doing it that way. And that's what Doug and Stacy do too. So it seems to be fine. Anyway, this is Zeus. Hi, Zeus. Can you say hi? It's hot. Big old 100-pound hound dogs just lay around in the heat. He's actually half Great Pyrenees and half red tick coonhound. Okay, so out here is my brand new compost bin because once the bucket filled up, I had to have a place to put the contents. So let me show you how that works and how I put it together. Because again, I just winged it. I did watch Doug and Stacy's videos and kind of went by his design a little bit. So this is built out of just treated cedar fence posts because they were $2 each and I like a bargain. Here's my first pile. It's covered up with leaf litter. Doug and Stacy use hay, but we've got cows on our property that our neighbor runs here, and I thought the hay would be a little too tempting for them, so I'm going with leaf litter. So the way this works is you fill up one side with the compost. Each time you bring a new load out, you kind of open up your pile, dump the new load in, cover it up with more leaf litter, and just let it sit. There's no turning or anything, it just sits. And it should take, with just 2 of us, it should take at least a year to fill up that side. Once it's full, you start filling the other side, and the first side is ready to go on your garden. And it makes really nice, dark, nutritious compost. The middle section is for the hay, or in my case, the leaf litter, to put in between bucketfuls. I was really pleased that with my generous use of sawdust, the contents just emptied out. There was no moisture in the bucket. There was nothing that I needed to clean out. It just dumped right out. So I'm really happy about that. I have plenty of sawdust and I will make more if I need to, because I don't like dealing with poop and pee, even though I'm a nurse. So the way the bins are made, I started with the sides. I cut each of the fence boards. They were 6-foot fence boards, and they've got the little notches at the end. But for $2 a board, I wasn't going to argue. I would have preferred 8-foot, but they were 6-foot and they were cheap, so I have tall, narrow bins. The 2x4s were 8-foot 2x4s that I cut in half. So the bins, each bin is like 3 feet by 4 feet. So to make the side, I laid down 2 2x4s flat, then sort of spaced out the half fence boards from one end to the other. And I like screws. I screwed them in. Lots of screws. Then I added a 2x4 at one end, perpendicular to the first one. And that's also screwed in with 3-inch screws between the fence boards. And that gave me a place to start the back boards across. Once I had the 4 sides made, you'll see all 4 are made the same way with 2 2x4s, except the 2 middle ones don't have the perpendicular post. That's just for the 2 outside ones. So there's the other one with the perpendicular post. Then I brought them outside and I started putting fence boards across. And you'll see it takes 1.5 fence boards to get across because they're 3 halves wide. There's your fraction practice for the day. So the fence boards are also exactly half. They're screwed in. I use 3-inch screws into the sideways 2x4 just for a more stable connection. Then I added a half 2x4, just ripped long ways in half, to the other side of the 2 middle pieces to give me a place to screw on the continuation of the fence boards. So you can kind of see how that all goes together. So far that's 1, 2, 4, 6, 8 half 2x4s. So that's 4 8-foot 2x4s, and then half of another 8-foot 2x4 to make these 2 pieces. Oh, 5 2x4s because I wasn't counting these perpendicular. Anyway, you can keep count. It took 39 of the fence boards and whatever I said of 2x4s. Anyway, then I was ready to do the front. So I sat it up. I ripped a couple of fence boards in half, and these are 4 feet, so this is more than a half of a board. So I did have some scraps left over. and I screwed those on to the 2x4s here. Then I came along with another ripped 2x4, ripped in half, and I used one of these boards plus a screw sticking in to space it just a little bigger, and then screwed those in. And then the fronts, so you can see the front boards just slide out so that you can take it down to whatever level you want depending what you're doing with the compost. And so I did that on the 4 posts across, and I mean that was basically it. And then I just cut these to size. I think they ended up being, it's actually 33 inches from here to here, but I made them 32.5 so they'd slide a little easier. And that's that. And that's all it took. So even I can build a compost bin, and if I can do it, you can. Oh, I did screw a half fence post ripped in half down to the bottom of each one just to keep them square, so that the boards will slide in and out properly. So that's my compost toilet system. That's how it all works and how I put it together. If I missed any of your questions, just let me know and I'll try to answer them. And thanks for watching.